Julian Assange, speaker of deeply inconvenient truths and defender of global free speech, or dangerous radical who risks the safety of the people caught up in his leaks. For years, Assange has been trying to avoid extradition to the US on espionage charges. This is almost his last roll of the dice.
There is no possibility of a fair trial if Julian is extradited to the United States. He should never be extradited to the United States. He would never be safe. The United States plotted to murder my husband.
Assange spent much of the last decade seeking asylum in the Ecuadorian embassy. His legal team claimed today they'd seen evidence of a CIA plot to poison him while there, that President Trump had even asked for quote-unquote options. Make of that what you will. Since 2019, he's been locked up in Belmarsh. Assange says the extradition is politically motivated, he's now a suicide risk, and international law, plus the European Convention on Human Rights, demand that his extradition is refused. Rewind to 2010, a devastating video published by Assange's WikiLeaks that it claims shows a US Apache killing civilians in Baghdad, including 2 Reuters cameramen. Deeply embarrassing for Washington. But the Americans say Assange is the danger, because by publishing 500,000 classified military documents, he'd put the lives of its agents and informants at risk.
Julian Assange is a controversial figure, but whatever you think of him, there are many who are deeply concerned that what happens here over the next couple of days could have global implications for freedom of speech and freedom of the press.
If an Australian journalist publishing in Europe can be thrown in prison to die in the United States, not a single journalist anywhere in the world is safe.
What he was doing wasn't espionage, and it's a very dangerous precedent to start locking people up for espionage when nobody really believes that this was espionage.
Assange faces what his lawyers say would be a flagrant denial of justice in the US, if eventually convicted, up to 175 years in jail. Should Assange lose this case, his final hope, appealing to the European Court of Human Rights.
Well, joining me now is Julian Assange's wife, Stella Assange, who you saw there in that report. Thanks very much for joining us this evening. Just how critical a moment is this?
Well, it's decisive. If Julian loses this round, he could be on a plane to the United States this very week. So we really don't know what happens next.
I mean, you know these arguments very well. The US argue that he is not a journalist. This was not carefully curated material. It was a dangerous dump of raw cables and intelligence that put people at risk, and he should stand trial on that basis.
Well, what it really comes down to is whether exposing state crimes trumps state secrecy. And it is essential to journalism that journalists should be able to reveal state crimes, including when those crimes are covered up and classified, even in spite of the classification, because otherwise there's no way of holding governments to account. There's no way of influencing reform, of informing democracy. And the United States, of course, casts all sorts of aspersions, but what the case comes down to is that he is being accused of journalistic activity, of receiving information from Chelsea Manning, possessing it, and communicating it to the public. And that revealed torture, war crimes, the killings of tens of thousands of civilians in the catastrophic wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, and so on.
But if he is so certain of his case, of his innocence, why won't he go and make that case in court and end this?
Well, it's a very good question. You have to understand that Julian is being accused under the Espionage Act, and it is unprecedented that the Espionage Act has been used in this way against a publisher for publishing. There is no public interest defense under the Espionage Act. He would not be able to mount a defense. He would not be able to say, well, I published, it's true, but I published because I was revealing that the state was committing crimes and covering them up. That simply has no bearing in the case that he would face. So there is no possibility of a fair trial. And this is also the country, as you said in your introduction, who has been plotting to assassinate my husband. He would never be safe in US jurisdiction.
I mean, the US authorities obviously would deny that, but just tell me how he is. He was too unwell to attend the hearing today. When was the last time you spoke to him, saw him? How is he?
Well, actually, the United States has remained silent on the reports that there were assassination plans. And Mike Pompeo, who was the architect of these plans, has effectively confirmed the story by saying that the sources should be prosecuted not for libel, but under the Espionage Act for revealing state secrets. Julian is very unwell. He's been in Belmarsh High Security Prison for almost 5 years. He is not convicted of any crime. He is simply being warehoused there on behalf of a foreign power who is taking this retaliatory prosecution against a journalist who embarrassed them. His physical health is in decline. His mental health obviously is under extreme strain. And if he had been a free man, or at least under bail, then he would have, of course, been healthy enough to be able to attend the hearing. But we know what happens when people are in prison under a prolonged period of time. Julian is a political prisoner, and last week we saw what happens to political prisoners. What happened to Navalny could happen to Julian, and he should never be extradited, because that is what would happen.
Stella Assange, we're going to have to leave it there, but thank you very much for talking to us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.